Hey again, it's Zach, artist and animator from Ericat. This is episode 2 of mine and my brother's DevLog series for our game, Traits and Trials. I'll be assuming you've seen part 1, so watch that first for more context. Now let's push on. With our elevator pitch ready, we got to work on actual game design discussions. And there's no better way to do that than to buy a wall-sized whiteboard for our office, or Dennis's room. Here we would write all our ideas, colour coding with blue for art, green for code, and red for notes. This allowed for good communication, as well as making us look like savvy businessmen and or raving conspiracy theorists. I'll quickly throw out that we also have a Patreon for this project, for anyone that wishes to help us make not only these videos, but the game itself. Hopefully I'll be able to sell you on that in due time. For our project, we opted to try and get everything needed for a good trailer done first. For this, we needed a snazzy intro for the game. As my main job as an animator, I was looking forward to this. Alongside the intro, I spent my time designing the world of the game and the protagonist. And so we're off. While Dennis got to writing the code to create a random generator that dictates the traits you'll start with, I got to work designing the world of the game. I tried to design the character but wasn't feeling anything coming to me, so I started with the background for the first world instead. We liked the idea of an underground forest with giant mushroom trees and a mossy bed simulating grass. This underground grove needed lighting, so I gave it glowing mushrooms and a hint at some sort of glowing moss on the ceiling to simulate daylight. The duality of big looming mushrooms and soft nice moss being one of the few references of good and bad battling forces in the area that we'll be adding for a bit of storytelling. With the fungal forest finished, I thought to give the protagonist another crack. It ended up working a lot better that I'd made the background first, as it let me establish the character's size and colours in the world better, so I could make them stand out. We wanted a character that anyone could project themselves onto, so I gave the protagonist a suit of armour to keep them vague, but this made them too impersonal, so I lifted the face piece of the helmet, showing off their eyes. This would also lend itself to the physical traits they'll acquire over the game, so their eyes will show different expressions. We'll split their body into several pieces in order to have the traits' cosmetics affect different parts individually. Now to the intro. Ignoring these devlogs, this is intended to be the way that most people will be introduced to the story of the game, and hopefully what will grab their attention. It's also time I introduce you to our secret weapon for bringing this game to life. Ladies and gentlemen, our musician Nando. He's been working on the audio for the game for just as long as Dennis and I. We just thought we'd save his introduction for when we could show what he's been working on, starting with the intro. In fact, the smooth jazz you've been hearing behind my voice was made by Nando. You can find his SoundCloud in the description below. As discussed in the last video, check that if you haven't, our character and plot is fairly minimal, so we opted for a very minimal intro animation too. We didn't want to assume too much about the player, so the character is meant to mostly be a blank slate. So we had them act in ways that we expect the players to act. They're naive because the player knows nothing of the world. They're seeking adventure because the player is seeking adventure from the game. And they're not all that strong because the player won't be experienced from their first playthrough. We extended this to the temptation that lures the pilgrim to fall into the oubliette. We show treasure, power, magical ability, and glory, all things an adventurer would want, allowing the player to pick and choose what they're seeking. Now, before I sign off for this episode, I'll leave you with the full animatic with audio for the game's intro. Enjoy! That's the end of this episode. If you want to stay in the know for the game, please subscribe to the channel and follow our Twitter. I'd also like to say thanks to the first 2 patrons, my older brother Ben and my mum. Thanks, Mum.